Good night. AJ Mahara here with another comment response. Person left a comment on, yes, it was a short that I did called Ghosted by a BPD, question mark. It's abuse, not love. So, just checking the microphone. It's a very temperamental microphone. The commenter says, do you think making 12 amends helps? In other words, 12-step amends helps. I honestly see my part in the issues, total lack of boundaries. I have been in CODA recovery with sponsor and therapist, which, by the way, I highly don't recommend for people with codependency at all, the CODA, but it's very dysfunctional. The 12 steps of Codependence Anonymous are the exact same steps as Alcoholics Anonymous, which people with codependency who don't have alcoholism don't need to bother with that stuff. But this person does have a different reason for being there and not just codependency. So, then they continue. I ended the friendship a couple months ago. I take it with a person with BPD. But still suffering because of the harm I know I caused them. Not exactly guilt, but a weight because I played a part in all of this by not having healthy boundaries. So this is somebody with some other issues and etc. here, but which I'll get to, but they're extremely codependent because they're so worried about the pain that they believe they caused a person with BPD, a friend, by not having healthy boundaries. So in essence, what I think this commenter is describing, and if you can relate to this, is way, way too much responsibility taking. Good that they can identify they didn't have healthy boundaries. How much pain did that really cause the person with BPD or not? Hard to measure, hard to say, versus maybe all the harm that they were causing from the other side. The person with BPD, I mean. And so, not exactly guilt, but a weight because I played a part in all of this by not having healthy boundaries. I didn't want to hurt my friend with BPD, and I know I did. I know abandonment is a great fear for people with BPD, but I was so sick for months of high tension and worry over my friend's well-being. So what this commenter is describing is, they abandoned themselves and they were not taking care of themselves. They were really being affected by, hurt by, high tension, as they describe it, and worry over their BPD friends' well-being. So that means they were a little bit too much there and concerned and focused on the BPD friend and not enough on their own well-being at the same time. Commenter, can you relate to that? The commenter continues, it's not about reconnecting, but releasing this pain and apologizing for pain I caused my friend from my codependency. I have healthy humility. That's always a very positive quality. I am I am not just coda. I'm an alcoholic. It says and yes. So the person is saying I'm an alcoholic in the, I guess, AA. I need to make an amends, but do not want to cause my BPD friend any more harm. Well, there may be many of you out there that can relate to this, and maybe many that, you could have a drinking issue. Maybe you're not an alcoholic. Maybe you are. Maybe you don't know that yet. This happens to a lot of people, obviously. And so I really feel for this commenter. And one of the things that comes through to me in reading this and responding to this commenter is I think they're just really taking way too much responsibility for their BPD friends' plight in life, for their BPD friends' pain. And it's interesting that the commenter said, they don't want to reconnect, but they want to release the pain that they're in. Well, and may I just say that this is a little complicated to respond to because person is, working on, recovery from alcoholism or working on sobriety in AA. And so they, that's a really, I don't know how functional or not the program is, but yes, if anybody has alcoholism, I recommend AA, unlike I don't recommend Coda for people with codependency. Because as you've heard, this commenter has not only been in Coda, Codependence Anonymous, which is an outdated dysfunctional thing, more than not, but they've also been working with a therapist and their sponsor. And of course, they're also in Alcoholics Anonymous. And so it might seem like those things fit more together that way. But again, I mean this with all super respect and empathy to this commenter. This commenter still seems to have very severe codependency, even though they've been working the 12 steps of Codependence Anonymous in recovery with a sponsor and a therapist. So I don't know where they are in their sobriety, but of course that's majorly important for them to focus on that. And I know that in AA, and this is what doesn't make sense for Codependence Anonymous, but in AA, they really do. People who are in recovery and seeking sobriety and to maintain that are really working steps that are important for them to work, including, among others, their personal inventory, which again, I don't think helps people with codependency so much. But in AA, there's 12 steps, but the personal inventory is huge. And so too is the making of amends for people in AA and the way that program works to help people to get sober and stay sober. And that's very important. And this is what I'm not an expert in. I just had 2 parents that were alcoholics. I don't have anything against other people who are, this person is in recovery and in AA and with a therapist and taking their alcoholism seriously and working for sobriety. And I hope that you have sobriety and that you're maintaining your sobriety, commenter. But I think what's really difficult about this is probably like where the benefits of AA kind of end for this commenter and in terms of making amends, because it's really recommended that people, I think it's a he. Oh, I'll just say this person. Okay, because I'm not sure. And pictures, etc., don't always tell you. So this person is saying that, they really need to release some pain. Well, on that note, I would say that kind of pain for somebody with codependency and or this person who's been struggling with alcoholism and codependency, that kind of pain and needing to release it is something you need to still work more on with and talk more about with your therapist, because it's not something that is dependent upon whether you can actually make amends or communicate to your former BPD friend. That's something you need to focus more on for yourself. And if anybody can relate to this in a different way, even if you don't have any substance addiction or abuse happening, then it's really important to realize when you feel like you want to make amends or recontact an ex or a friend with BPD or a parent with BPD or whomever the person with BPD in your life may be or may have been, when you want to do a recontact, even when you know you don't want to reconnect, but you just want to release your pain. Often that's there when people don't even realize it. So this person's doing really well with insight to realize that part. Because you don't need to make amends. You don't need to recontact a former BPD friend or ex to release and work through and grieve your own pain. So I think this is paramount to this commenter. And then it's made a little more complicated by the fact that they are in AA as well. And I want to be really sensitive to that. And so, the commenter saying they know that they caused their BPD friend pain from their codependency. Well, this might seem like an odd statement to make, but I think they're still barely codependent. And even though they're insightful, maybe they're not clear enough on how much more they need to take responsibility, keep working with their therapist to heal their pain of codependency, but the codependent pain of knowing that they hurt their former BPD friend. Because to the commenter and anyone who can relate to this, at least in part, with codependency and maybe not the AA part, you have to realize that when you may have hurt them in some ways, but to try to make amends or recontact a former friend with BPD or an ex with BPD to say that you're sorry that you hurt them and because of your codependency or whatever you might say, that way of thinking is codependent. That action, if one takes it, is highly codependent. Why do I say that? Generally, I say that, but also based on this commenter, there goes my voice, sorry. Because the number one thing, if you're the ex of somebody with BPD, or you're the ex-friend of somebody with BPD, or the favorite person, or whatever the case, and like this commenter, you have codependency and you realize that, and you really wanna apologize for the pain that you think, or maybe that you did cause. But why do I say that's codependent still? Because that's not what you need to do. What you need to do is focus on you. What you need to do is take care of you. And why do I say that? Because even when even if you've hurt somebody with BPD, and this commenter is saying they really believe that, and I don't, I believe what they're saying is their experience and the way that they have experienced this. But they're saying they really want to make amends because they're in pain about the pain that they caused their former BPD friend by being codependent and having poor boundaries. So let me know what you think in the comments if it's not going to be crickets to this one. Because I don't think that's still putting the person with BPD ahead of yourself. They hurt you, and I'm not saying, they hurt you, so if you hurt them, it doesn't matter. No, it matters that you process that. It matters and I'm out here to work with people. If I resonate with you, you want to go through this process of healing recovery, gaining closure, taking responsibility for anything you think that you might have done to hurt the person with BPD, if in fact that's the case in your experience, and how best to process that. It's not by trying to recontact a former friend with BPD or an ex, or like if you were their favorite person, etc. No, because that's just counterindicated here. It's not in your best interest at all. Because no contact where that's a possible reality, when there aren't children and other things involved, maintaining no contact is more important than trying to make amends or apologize, or more to the point, codependently need to release your pain by saying something to them. Because to this commenter, I would say you need to continue to work with your therapist, maybe still talk about it with your AA sponsor, or I don't know if you have an AA sponsor or codependent or both, but primarily take it to your therapy with your therapist about why you feel such strong need to, and I understand the making amends in the AA program, and so that's really important for your sobriety and etc. But it's kind of running against your best interest as a person with codependency, if that makes any sense. Complicated situation because, hopefully you're sober, but you're in recovery to be sober and to stay sober. So I would say take this back to your therapist, who may or may not be an expert in BPD, right? But I want to just say that it's your codependency still driving. You're so wanting to release your pain and tell that ex-BPD friend that you're sorry, that you make amends to them because you hurt them. But you know what, commenter? I don't think you hurt them half as much as you think you did. Because remember, people with BPD in friendship, in any relationship type, are often telling people about how much they've been hurt. Oh, you just did this. Oh, you just did that. Oh, well, and you said that you didn't have healthy boundaries. Okay, well, how much do you think that really hurt your friend, your ex-friend with BPD? Because I would say probably not half as much as they might have hurt you. So I'm not saying there isn't somewhat of a two-way street here, that when some people get hurt by a borderline, they also hurt the borderline back. But especially when you are working on your sobriety and your recovery, it sounds like your codependency recovery still needs a heck of a lot of work, with all due respect. So even though I understand, I'm not expert in alcoholism or anything, but I understand the 12-step program, and when people are working sobriety and to stay sober in Alcoholics Anonymous and with a therapist and sponsor, that making amends is really important. But this is one where I think it goes against, like, the harm and the compromise that that could cause you, commenter, is greater than what the amends are really meant to help you with and to help you through. And I think the fact that you have insight into this, that you're taking responsibility, that you know what you mean by how you hurt your BPD, your ex BPD friend by having poor boundaries, or maybe you need to discuss that further to maybe process that more with your therapist as well. But okay, if you're saying that you hurt them, I believe you, and you're really feeling bad about that, and you said that you have um, healthy humility, and that's excellent. But again, commenter, in terms of your sobriety and your recovery, and you're working to still recover from codependency, don't put the healthy humility in action, focusing on someone that you're no longer in touch with, that you were hurt by, when you what you really I don't know if this is the right way to put it, but what you really need to do, what you really owe here, is not an amends to the ex-friend with BPD. No, you owe more to yourself to keep working on your codependency, learn how to release that pain with your therapist, and you've taken responsibility for it, and that's the most major thing. And so even though in AA they stress this making amends, again, speak with your therapist, but I would strongly recommend against that, because the healthy humility and the program that you're working through and how you're working on your alcoholism and recovery from that is all very important. But dare I say that recontacting an ex-friend with BPD to try to make amends could put all of your work at risk if they really treat you poorly in that effort. It's not worth the risk, I would say. And the other thing that kind of is a red flag for me about what you're saying, commenter, is that it's not about reconnecting with your ex-BPD friend. But the commenter said, quote, "It's but releasing this pain and apologizing for pain I caused my friend from codependency. I have healthy humility." I think you need to learn a little bit more about focusing on yourself as a person working on healing codependency, and especially as a person in recovery, from alcoholism, and hopefully you are sober and staying sober. It's in your best interest to focus mostly, and at this point only, on yourself. So maybe you could write it down as part of your making amends, as part of that, if people write that down and keep track of who they make amends to, etc., in AA. You might want to just write down that you've acknowledged this, that you have healthy humility, that you send out sort of good energy to that ex-BPD friend, and in that sense, it's a form of making amends. But to make direct contact, to try to make amends when the person with BPD likely really hurt you as well, as you mentioned, that you need to make an amends but do not want to cause your friend any more harm. You also mentioned that you were suffering for months, and you were so sick from months of high tension and worry over your ex BPD friend's well being. So, commenter, I would just, my 2 cents worth is focus on yourself, take care of yourself, don't recontact to make amends, write it out, write it down, journal it. Know that you've made the amends with your own realizations. Sometimes we can't always communicate those amends, okay? And if you weren't somebody in recovery from alcoholism and for sobriety, gaining sobriety to keep your sobriety and move forward in your life, and still work hard on your codependency, which is still very evident here in your comment, and I say that with empathy, not judgment, that yeah, you need to set aside the actual contact of actually verbally or even writing a letter, contact in any way with an ex-friend or person with BPD, like an ex-partner, etc., is just not healthy. So you have to put yourself, your sobriety, your health, your therapy all first. So I hope that makes sense. And just wanted to say too that um, when you said do you think making the 12-step amends helps? I think in some relationships with your codependency, perhaps what you've experienced or what's happened for you when you've been struggling with alcohol and drinking, in a lot of cases, maybe it does make sense, right? Obviously, it's part of the AA program for a reason. But where I don't think it makes sense for you, commenter, because you need to be taking care of precious you, is to recontact anybody with BPD from any relationship type for any reason. And the other thing I want to stress one more time, and if anybody relates to this except for the AA part, think about it because it probably applies to you as well. That I was just going to say the commenter again to reiterate that part of what you said, which is with all due respect and empathy, commenter, still very codependent, is that you wanna release the pain that you feel, as well as apologize to your ex-friend with BPD. But it's way more important, commenter, that you focus on yourself, that you keep putting because it sounds like you were really harmed by the person with BPD as well, more so than probably you harmed them. And you really need to keep putting yourself first. And the other thing I want to reiterate again is to anybody or to this comment, or if you feel like trying to get the ex back in many of your situations, trying to apologize to an ex to get them back, etc., which is not what this commenter is saying, or an ex friend, or you were the favorite person. In this commenter's comment and situation, you and everybody else's, okay, I want to say you don't releasing pain to the person that you believe you harmed as well as they harmed you isn't necessary in order to be able to release that pain. And that's what I want this commenter, but others to hear really, really like take that away from this video because it's in your best interest not to recontact somebody with BPD because they really hurt you too. And the commenter alludes to being hurt, really being sick, and that might have meant more drinking for them as well, which is not the person with BPD's responsibility either. But yeah, commenter, I understand the importance of making amends in the AA recovery program, and you're in therapy as well. But take it back to therapy with your therapist. And if they're not expert enough in codependency, maybe seek out someone else to talk to as well. I'm not saying leave your therapist because they're probably helping you with more than just a codependency. So anyway, to this commenter, absolutely my response to you is no. Put yourself first, write it out, talk about it with your therapist, talk about it in AA or with your sponsor. But just know that all of the making amends that AA recommends and that it's really important for you to make as many amends as you can in that process. Just know it doesn't apply to recontacting somebody with BPD, whether they were a friend, whether they're an ex-partner, whomever they are, because you need to put you first. And so I also see inherent codependency in the commenter. Can you relate to this if you're being real with yourself? Inherent struggle with codependency about what to do or not to do in this case. And so I want to say again to the commenter and anybody that relates otherwise or maybe and or with a problem with alcohol or not, you need to put yourself first. It's not about apologizing to the person with BPD, even if you did something that hurt them, because the chances are that when the person with BPD was hurt and or reacting to you, etc., they were triggered, and it might just not have been that much your responsibility or your fault. Their pain, their hurt, their being triggered as people think. So I hope the commenter will see this. I know the comment was left a little while ago, but I wouldn't advise anybody, even when you're working on your sobriety, etc. And it's so important in AA. I understand that making amends, but the fact that this former friend of yours is a person with BPD who hurt you, worried you, probably caused you a lot of hurt, pain, and stress as well. Put yourself first and stay no contact with the person with BPD that was in your life, commenter, and anyone else out there as well. So it's time to take care of precious you, to the commenter, to anyone else that relates, anybody else that still wants. to get an ex back or to say they're sorry. Because, the other thing is that you're still probably, to the commenter and to people with codependency in general out there, wherever you are in all these iterations of what's going on, or the relationship is over, there's no contact with the ex or the ex friend with BPD anymore, you're probably blaming yourself and in your codependency feeling so bad about the borderline's pain that you're losing a clear view of what you need right now, and that you are not responsible for hurting them, probably not as anywhere near as much as the commenter or others out there who might listen or see this video as you think. Because remember, you're not responsible for the inherent pain that borderlines are walking around with. You're not responsible for their triggers. You're not responsible for when they yell and scream at you because they're blaming you that you hurt them, that you're the reason they're triggered, that you're the reason they're emotionally dysregulated and in agony. So, no, in a situation like this, and generally speaking for people, when there's no contact, maybe because the person with BPD just won't let you contact them, take that as a small bit of a gift that you can open in therapy. And I'm out here to work with anybody that resonates with me that might have this process to do with or without the AA component and the working on sobriety or staying, clean from other substances. YouTube really makes us talk funny here. But no, put yourself first, commenter, put yourself, anyone else listening to this. You don't need to make amends to a person with BPD because you are likely not anywhere near as responsible, if at all, for all of the pain that they caused you and all of the blaming and guilting that they've done towards you. Put yourself first is a big part, and staying no contact, putting yourself first and staying no contact, huge pieces of what recovery requires. And to the commenter specifically, or anyone else dealing with any substance abuse issues or alcohol issues, when you are in recovery for sobriety, you need to be putting yourself absolutely first, and regardless of that or not. So I don't recommend anybody recontacts anybody with BPD because you are in an AA 12-step program where making amends is really important. They should have written out, but of course they don't deal so much with personality disordered stuff. But what I would say to anybody who's in AA, as well as, Codependence Anonymous, which isn't the most helpful thing, and working with a therapist, like as commenter, I recommend that there should be something in the AA terminology that says something like, but if you were with a borderline or a narcissist, then your no contact is more important than you're making amends. I hope that helps. Take care.